Yes, so good evening to all of our listeners. Good evening to those who have locked in on social media. Welcome to Real Talk, our usual Monday social media program. Today, already the 14th of April. How time flies. The weather is changing, tremendously. And where I'm located, for sure, they call it spring, but it's a nice warm spring so far, you know, and, it's looking good. So let me say good evening to everyone who has been locked in. And let me say to you, the public, that is our duty and mission as a United Workers Party, to bring information to you. We feel delighted to be part of the environment with respect to, bringing information to the public. And we like the exchanges that we have. As we say, this program is about, setting the agenda, for informing. And also, too, we are, welcome to suggestions, we're welcome to questions, and where applicable, questions will be answered. Your participation is, expected and is, welcome. And so we just say to you tonight, good evening to you. With me, I have the political leader, Dr. Honorable Thomson Fontaine, who is the political leader of the United Workers Party and has been very much steering and anchoring this program, very much so. And we want to just thank Dr. Thomson Fontaine for always being ready to share with the public. As you know, that this program is going on for a good 17 weeks now. And to be honest, it is growing and it is growing and it's getting better. Tonight we'll be exploring some areas of concern. We still have that Debrush issue to talk about. We know about the letters going black is white, and some people misconstruing points that person said long ago. And also we have IMF report to explore with respect to what the IMF has been saying. Maybe not something new, because Dr. Thomson Fontaine has been echoing and expressing many of these concerns for a long while. But just to show you how great minds think alike, we will be at least showing you and giving you some perspectives as to what has been shared. So again, let me say good evening to everyone. Well, Doc, as usual, welcome. And usually, what is happening on the ground? Because everybody's saying, well, the United Workers Party needs to be on the ground, and we agree with it to be on the ground. And we agree we have to intensify, being on the ground. But tell us what is happening, because we have been on the ground, and I'm sure you have some news for the general listening public to understand what is it that we do as a party. So I welcome you tonight to Real Talk.
Yes, so good night to you, and of course to many listeners, many of whom who are tuning in our way at this time. It's great to be back on Real Talk. And when you mentioned the date, I have to take a second look. It's already the 13th of April. It's like month end was just 2 days ago. It's amazing how quickly the month goes by. I mean, I was really shocked. You said it, and it was like the 13th already. And yeah, it is the 13th of April.
Already the 13th.
So so we're moving full speed ahead. And I just want to say, so as I start off this discussion on what we have been doing on the ground, I wanted to start with a big thank you, to the residents of Campbell. They opened their homes and their doors and their hearts to us, and it's just fantastic. We were there last week. We were able to reach out on both Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday we went there, did house to house, advertised our meeting, and actually it's very nice people. So I got some really nice coffee, enter the home, and we offered coffee.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah. It was quite. I was quite impressed, and very friendly people. And then on Thursday we had a public meeting, which went very, very well. The turnout was fantastic. We had a number of young people who showed up, and many of them showed up. They wanted their T-shirts and their caps, and so it's a situation where we gave them the caps and the T-shirts, for they were going to just take it home. But guys put that on right away.
Right away.
So they had people putting on their T-shirts and boldly proclaiming their support for the United Workers Party. So I really want to say a big thank you. Of course, Campbell is part of a larger constituency. It's part of the Maho constituency, a very big constituency that is, including Maho, Taru, Massac, Kenfield East, Warner. So it's a very big community. So we are tackling Mao right now. In fact, this week we'll be doing a similar program in Warner. We'll be there on the ground on Wednesday, and on Thursday we'll have been having a public meeting in Warner. So we're continuing that outreach to our people. So that's very, very important for us, because we believe that that's how we're going to know what people are thinking, know what they're saying. And it's excellent, because we're getting some really good feedback from the people on the ground. And one of the things that we've been very much concerned about is the whole question of confirmation. As you know, a number of persons were reluctant to go and confirm. So we were able to, over the weekend, actually take this concern up with the Electoral Commission. The Chief Elections Officer was at a function organized by the Dominica Business Forum on Saturday, and I was able to pose those questions to her directly. And one of the questions that I posed is, what are you going to be doing with villages like Campbell, which were just there, and they was complaining that they do not want to go to,
How
to
proper.
Maho, because in fact when we went there on Wednesday, the whole idea was that we would get the names of persons who wanted to go to confirm, and we would come back the following day and actually bus them down to
Very good.
Maho. But
Great
a number of
initiative.
persons were saying, boy, they're not interested there, they don't want to go. So we posed that question to the electoral office and the chief elections officer, and she did inform us that they are working on some mobile confirmation centers where they will go to those areas. So they will specifically go to villages like Warner, Campbell, Mont Prosper, areas that do not currently have confirmation centers, and be able to confirm everyone, those who want to confirm on that day. So they'll be making those announcements well in advance, so that people know where they're coming. But I think it's a good thing. I actually complimented them for that. I think it's good, because that was a major concern that we had. I also raised another concern with the Electoral Commission, because what they indicated to us is that so far they have received over 14,000 applications for confirmation. 14,000. However, they have only been able to process about 3,000. And that's the reason why a number of persons who applied for confirmation in December and January, their names are still not appearing on the list that have been published by the Electoral Office. And the reason for that is they have a two-tier verification process. So after you bring in your witness, you verify that you are the person on the voters list. That information then goes to the electoral office. The electoral office then appoints two different tiers of verification. So they go through every single application at the first level, ensuring that the persons who signed up were in fact from that constituency. They have to double check the names. They double check the names, the spelling on the form, and all the rest of it. They do all of that vetting. Then it is vetted by a second group of people, and it's at that point that it appears on the list. But that process has been moving extremely slowly. And the other thing that she explained, which clarifies what we're concerned about, persons who, for example, registered since in December, are not yet on the list. She did indicate that they were doing it up to now. They were doing it on a kind of a random basis. So they would have all the names. They would just select. So they could select a name that had just applied for confirmation instead of a name that had applied in December. But they are now changing that, because they realize the confusion that is causing. So they are now going to change, and they have requested a software update that would allow them to do it by batches. So whatever comes in that month will be processed first. Complete that process and then move on to the next month, and so on. So they're making those changes, and that is in process. The other, so what I raised the issue very strongly about the need for this extra layer of verification. And if you're going to be moving at that pace, then by the time we get to December, it is October, sorry. By the time we get to October, when the process ends, I expressed concern that we will not have everybody who's applied for confirmation appearing on that list that comes out in November, because there is very good reason to believe that the Prime Minister may announce elections for December. So the question then becomes, will you have a list that contains every single person who has been confirmed? We got the assurance. She assured me that they were making some changes within the commission based on the experience they've had in the past few months that will speed up the process of verification and allow all of the names that have applied for confirmation, ensure that those names appear on the list. So she felt that they would be in a position to take care of that problem over the next few months so that we do not have a situation where October comes, you publish a list in November, and if elections are called in December, the list that applies is November, but that list itself is incomplete, not covering all those who have applied for confirmation. So we got the assurance that is being done, and we are very thankful for that. The other issue that was raised in that consultation with the Electoral Commission had to do with the voter ID cards, because we raised the question of why it is that up to now we do not have voter ID cards. The Chief Elections Officer, Mrs. Joseph, explained to us that they got some voter ID cards of those who were confirmed, but when they received those cards, they realized that there was an error in the cards, in the sense that the vendor who was approached to do the cards, they used the same form that was in the legislation. And the form in the legislation has a big sample written across it. So apparently somebody did not notice. So when they put the information on that form that has sample stamped across it, that's how the voter ID cards came out. So they had to do away with those and asked that the voter ID cards be redone. So the expectation is that by the end of June, we should start seeing the first set of voter ID cards. So that was the update that we got from the electoral office, addressing concerns about the speeding up of the confirmation process. We also raised, importantly as well, the issue of registration. In that a number of persons had indicated that they were called by the electoral office to turn in their paper. A number of registering officers were asked to turn in their books and so on. They were no longer part. And the electoral office explained that they were doing that because some persons did not have the computer skills, some person did not have the knowledge of, because you have now to operate a computer, operate a photograph when people go into register, because you have to take the photograph, you have to enter that into the computer. So they were looking for persons who were computer literate in that sense to carry out the task. So they have now, and they've now moved it to, for the ease, they have moved that into the confirmation centers. So registration will take place there almost simultaneously, and some of the registering officers have been replaced. So that is where they are with regards to registration. She also indicated that about 650 persons have registered to date since it was opened on the 9th, I think, of March. So just over a month, and about 650 individuals have applied for registration. And these individuals will be on the list, and the names will appear next time the list comes out. So that is the update from the Electoral Commission and on the ground. So we're moving along, as I said. I can also say that our people are really fed up with this government, obviously, and a lot of complaints, a lot of concern about the state of the economy, about the growing level of inflation in the country, about the growing hardships that our people are experiencing. Just a lot of concern being expressed by the people of Dominica.
Yes, well, I'm happy for the update, and I'm sure the listening public as well, you know, they're happy for it. But I just want to say these things that you highlighted as setbacks, I think it's more or less mismanagement as opposed to setbacks. We are happy for the clarification, because a simple form that have sample on it, that should have been a sample, and someone should have vetted that form before they gave the printers or the contractor the okay to go ahead. I mean, or you do things and you don't know it's a sample form you have. And by the way, you should not have had a large number of cards being processed or sent to you. You should have asked for a sample before to see how the card is, so that you will know if you're okay with it. So I think this is a lot of mismanagement, and they are cleaning it up, and we hope that they can clean it up with respect to the timing. Something I have a concern with, though, is that with the new registration, I have inquired in Roseau Central, and that is the case where a number of assistant registering officers have been asked that or have been told that right now they are no longer assistant registration officers. There's a problem with this, doc, because one, take for instance in Roseau Central, we have 7 districts, and I think you had about 7 registering assistant registering officers. I think it went down to about 5 because 1 or 2 persons had left, gone overseas, and had not returned. So about 5. But yeah, that why that is very important. You have what they call a confirmation center, which is now being used as a new registration center now. So for new persons registering for the first time, they have to go to the reconfirmation centers. But yeah, that based on what you are saying with the amount of work they have on the backlog, it appears to me that due diligence was not conducted, or a true assessment of the situation was not conducted before they made the decision to have the new registrations conducted at the confirmation centers. One, the persons in the respective districts, take for instance in MO5, whoever is doing MO5 in Roseau Central, the district in MO5, that person would have known everybody. So I come to you as a new registrant. Remember now, you're going to put me down, but you have what they call a vetting and supervision. Begin by telling you, now, I live in, let's say, 8 River Street. You, as that person with the assistant registration officer, has to now go and verify whether or not I live on 8 River Street, which means that you have supervision taking place there. When that happens at the confirmation center, with all the work they have to do there, do they have the time to go and vet to find out before they give confirmation? What they should have done is to hold a few registering officers, assistant registering officers, let them do what they call the initial registration. So they do all the vetting, and when they would have submitted the names, it would have confirmed that the vetting is already done. All the center has to do is to process the person, giving them okay and the green light. But in the case where they have a lot of work to do now, and you take that thing to them, they have no time to go back and vet. What is going to happen now? You may more than likely have a lot of persons now falsifying their addresses, and they do not have the manpower to go and see whether or not that person truly live or I live on 8 River Street, as was given to you as an example. So I think there are flaws in that system, and they need to reconsider and to have some assistant officers do what they don't have to have competence from them, understand limitations about computer applications, and so we don't talk about computer, we're talking about the initial registration, where that assistant registration officer would go and vet the person who comes to say he or she lives in a particular district. And then after that is done, they would have certified on the paper, look, the vetting has been done, that person is okay, you can process the person. But if everything goes to the center, there'll be not enough time. But I don't want to spend much time on that. That is something that we can bring up later, and that is our concern. But Doc, we have not finished with Debosh. A number of persons over the couple of weeks, they have stood up and they continue to stand for Debosh, and not just Debosh, but the preservation of our environment. We have a lot of persons who are passionate about the environment. We have a lot of persons with expertise with respect to preservation of the environment and air pollution and everything else. And I know that you have been monitoring yourself. You were one of the persons being, at Debosh and seeing how it happened. What is the update on this? Where are we going there? And I probably could couple that with probably some of the capital projects that are going on.
Yes, so the Debosh issue continues to be very worrisome in the sense that the government continue to insist that that's the only place that they can find the rocks to build the airport, or the persons are concerned that you have a lot of mining that is taking on. What is not in dispute is the fact that this area of Debosh does in fact contain deposits of copper. That is not in dispute. That has been verified by various studies over the years, going back to the 1960s, that there are in fact deposits of copper. At one time, we understood that they wanted to take over 160 acres of land in Debosh for the so-called mining for rocks for the airport, which seemed to be extremely exorbitant. We are now told that they're looking at now probably about 18 acres, which is still a substantial amount of real estate there at the very heart of the heartland of Dominica. We have talked about the impacts that that whatever activity that was started have had already on the Kalinago community, destruction of some of the rivers and so on, and all the rest of it that goes with that. And the question obviously is, should we be paid that higher price for a few rocks to put in an international airport. And when you talk like that, people say, well, you're against the international airport. We are not against the international airport. The United Workers' Party government had, in fact, moved very, very quickly in its first few years in office to actually start work on an international airport. It took the Labour Party more than 20 years of being in government to even start, to even think of the idea of an international airport. So when people talk about not wanting one, I would blame the government that has been there for 20 years, and it took them 20 years to finally get to work at an international airport. So we're not against it, but we have to raise those environmental concerns because, after all, Dominica is a nature island, and we should not be destroying the very thing that we want to be able to attract tourists into our country. So, and I believe that this thing can be built by using the other quarries and badging the whatever stones they need from Collio down to Woodfordale, Wesley. That is certainly possible, and we need to look at a different way. So what I'm going to do now, so I'm going to show a very disturbing video, an aerial video of the mining that many Dominicans have not yet seen. It is on there on YouTube, but the number of people have not yet seen it. And I wanted to show it because it speaks to the extent of the destruction. And you're wondering if it is just to get some stones to build a 10,000-foot runway, why is that mining so expansive? Why is it going so deep? Why is it? What exactly is going on? So I'm going to add this on. I should be able to share it on the screen so everybody can see what it is. So let me get this. We are going to play this, and then we will see exactly what is going on there.
Why are you hiding? Mine deep within our forests. Why are you hiding? So others won't see what you are doing. Hiding and mining, is that what we are doing? Breaking down our mountains while hiding. I'm guessing if you don't see it, it doesn't exist. I'm guessing if you don't hear it, it doesn't exist. Why are you hiding? Why are you hiding? So we don't find out. Why are you hiding? This day was only for copper. I'm breaking down another mountain for its rocks. Why are you hiding? Why not protect the forest? Why not protect the rivers? Why not protect the river? Why are you hiding? Why are you lying? Lies on lies, only lies, only lies. The deepest cut requires the biggest stitches. Why are you hiding? Why aren't you failing us? Why are you hiding? Mine deep within our forests. Why are you hiding? So others won't see what you are doing. Hiding and hiding, is that what we are doing? Breaking down our mountains while hiding. I'm guessing if you don't see it, it doesn't exist. I'm guessing if you don't hear it, it doesn't exist. Why are you hiding? Why are you hiding? So we don't find out. Why are you hiding? This day was only for copper. While breaking down another mountain for its rocks. Why are you hiding? Why not protect the forest? Why not protect the rivers? Why not protect the rivers? Why are you hiding? Why are you lying? Lies on lies, only lies, only lies. The deepest cut required is the biggest stitches. Why are you hiding? Why aren't you telling us? Scared we stand against your view. Our hearts are strong, our will is true. Dominica shines in golden hue. Together we'll make it through. The time has come to take our stand. United we reclaim our land. Scared we say no to you. You'll never take us, we'll break through. Dominica, we love you so. Together we will rise and glow. The waves may crash, the winds may blow. But through the storm our light will show. Dominica, our love will grow. Forever strong, forever bold. Yeah. The time has come to take our stand. United we'll reclaim our land. If we say no to you, you'll never take us, we'll break through. Dominica, we love you so. Together we will rise and glow. We say no to you. You'll never take us, we'll break through. Dominica, we love you so. Together we will rise and glow. no to you. You'll never take us, we'll break through. Dominica, we love you so. Together we will rise and glow.
Yes, indeed. And again, this is testimony from an aerial point of view. And I'm just trying to wonder if this really is a stone area. Why is it that you have to get in so far to get stones?
For you
I
not see.
really find you have to go right inside to get stones.
I
Funny
mean,
though,
it's mind
does that
boggling.
surprise you?
You look at this video and all you see is dirt. It's copper. It's red soil. Where are the rocks? I mean, it's clear what's going on there. It absolutely is clear. But what I don't understand, so is why we have to do that to them. It is so horrible to see this scar on the mountains, and that's the fact that this is in our central reserve forest. This area actually supports the rivers and a lot of waterways around Dominica, such a vital part of our ecosystem here in Dominica. And it has been destroyed. It has been destroyed in the name of progress, and that cannot be right under any kind of thing. And I don't believe that we have to choose between the airport and Demarsh. Anybody saying that, they're obviously wrong. We don't. That should not be a choice that we have to make. Our quarries in Collio and elsewhere have provided the same kind of material for airports in the Martinique and Guadeloupe and other areas. Even in St. Vincent, I'm told we ship stuff down there to them. So there is no reason to say that it must come from Demarsh. And that is what we are saying. Isn't that too high a price to pay, for an international airport, when that really should not be a choice that we should have to engage in?
Yes, thanks again. And so we're going to shift gears. I mean, Dominicans could see for themselves and they could make their own assessment out of it, do their own evaluations. And, I just can't understand why stones have to be so right inside like that. I don't know. That something is wrong. But, Doc, some time ago, you're an economist by profession, and you have been warning us with the impending, economic collapse at any time. And based on the way that we operate, and based on past budgetary, budgets, allocations, and so, we have seen and we have noted how the CBI money has accounted for about almost more than just above half of the allocation for our budget. And so you were warning of that predicament. And some time ago, the IMF, some couple of years ago, the IMF came in and they gave the government some pointers. We were looking with respect to the CBI and other pointers to get adjusted to avert an economic collapse, and so that they were benchmarked against certain things and they will want to do certain things. But all along, you have been saying a number of things, which you will repeat there tonight. And the IMF has recently given a report on Dominica's status. And most of what they have been recommending are things that you have been talking about. And so I would like you to walk us through as to what is it that the IMF has been proposing or has proposed with respect going forward, and what are some of the findings that kind of will left Dominicans shocked, because it is not new to us that this government is really mismanaging the economy, and they have not found the rightful footing with respect to a direction with their policies, their fiscal policies to get things going. So you can lead this discussion right into it, and in relation to the IMF report.
Well, so yes, I think I want to start with the growth that has been registered for this year, for this past year, 2025, and what is underlying it. So, if I may, I think I can actually bring on screen.
Oh, certainly you can do that.
I can possibly bring on screen some of the report. So let's see if we can do that. Yes, it's right there. So we can do this. Right. I think it's very important. And then we want to go to this first part. No, this is not the correct one. No, this is not the correct one. So let me look again. I think, okay, I thought I had it lined up there. Um, let's try
Take your
again.
time,
It's
take your
certainly
time.
not, it's certainly not
Patience.
the correct one. Let's see. Let's see this. Okay. All right. So let's try this. No. Let's try this one. Let's see. All right. Let me just.
So while you're looking at it, I will just
I
say,
can,
look at it still.
I'm not able to pull it up. I'm seeing one thing, but it is pulling up something differently. So I'm not sure why. There's a little technical. There's a legal technical issue there, which I don't think I can figure out. I can sort that out at this time because it's showing one thing and it is reflecting something else. So, but anyway, I can talk about some of the main areas, and one of them I would like to look at is the rate of growth. Okay, so it's indicating that the economy grew, real GDP grew by 4.5% in 2025, from 3.5% in 2024. And they say that the two reasons why the economy grew really is robust tourism. Tourism has been leading the way, and development investment. So effectively, the IMF is saying that the economy has been growing because of tourism and because of tourism and also investment projects, implying, of course, the international airport. The problem about this growth uh, is that it is not far reaching. So, for example, if you compare growth, this year's growth of 4.5%, with 4.5% of growth in the 1990s and early 2000s, before the Labour Party took over, if you compare that same 4% or that same level, it would be a major difference in terms of how it is felt in the economy. Because where we had growth 15, 20, let's say 30 years ago, it was broad-based. It was growth in agriculture. It was growth in fishing. It was growth in construction, domestic construction. So you could see the tangible benefits of that growth. Now we have a tourism sector that is largely dependent on cruise ship arrivals. And the way you calculate the growth from tourism, it is just a component of the volume of traffic that we are getting. So if this year you got 1 million visitors, next year you get 1.5 million visitors, then you would say that's a 50% increase. Okay. The problem about the tourism industry, the way it is structured, is that when the boats come in, we do get boats, only a fraction of the visitors come on shore. And study after study that has been done on the tourism industry has shown that in all of the Caribbean region, from the Bahamas in the north to Trinidad in the south, Dominica gets less in terms of the tourist dollar. In other words, tourists spend less on Dominica because a number of them, they just don't come out of the boat. They will not even come out. Others who come out, they go to a site and then they come back for lunch and dinner on the boat. So they don't even buy food. They don't really spend much except on the few tours. In some cases, the tours are prepaid. So yes, the numbers are reflecting the economy is growing, but the net impact on the economy is not what it normally should be. And people need to understand that. Now let's talk of the other area of growth after tourism is the development projects, mainly, i.e., the international airport, and to some extent the geothermal activity. But in both of those instances, the majority of the resources are going outside. So yes, it's recording that development is taking place, that monies are being spent, but these monies are not being spent on Dominicans. All right, the majority of workers, more than 98% of persons working on those projects are foreigners. And these individuals, although they live in Dominica, they have their own homes, they have their own little villages. They don't even spend in the general economy. So a dollar in GDP in today's Dominica is absolutely not the same as a dollar in GDP a few years ago. And that is why it's very important. So, yes, the numbers are great, but at the end of the day, that is the reason why we are saying, although we have economic growth, 4.5%, we are not seeing the consequent impact on the economy because of where that growth is coming from. And that is due to a failure of this government to stimulate agriculture, a failure of this government to stimulate the fishing industry, a failure of this government to stimulate the construction industry, to provide, for example, incentives for persons to build their homes. They have built homes for individuals so that the wealth is not even going into the hands of those individuals. It resides elsewhere. And so we have a very complicated system, a very complicated economy in Dominica these days where, yeah, the economy is showing growth, but in effect, in truth, and in effect, you're not seeing that on the everyday person as you would in the past.
Yes, and so let us get this thing about the growth, get it settled once and for all and understandable there. Because, for instance, if you conduct a survey at a time when you do not have a number of projects going on, let's say capital projects and so forth, obviously you'll not get a good reflection as to the employment level. So the employment level will have been down. As opposed to if you have that project going on the international airport, the geothermal, then you have employment on the rise because you would have to calculate that in the whole idea of calculating growth. And so I don't know at what point that survey was done for them to come up with the growth. But I wanted to understand, I wanted to clarify this thing for us, the growth, because you talk about, measuring the growth. And years ago, that same 4% or 5% that we're experiencing now would have been different. And I will agree too that this doesn't have a lot of impact right now locally because it's not that people are enjoying a big benefit from this because right now you have inflation that is plenty higher than when it used to be yesteryears. So I don't know at what time that thing was gone because for you to get the level of growth, you have to measure certain indicators. I wanted to draw our attention to how you go about measuring this growth because it is very important that we understand it and what factors that you use to come up with that general growth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so yeah, absolutely, and it is very critical, So because for example, when you're measuring growth in GDP,
right,
in the agriculture sector, for example, what you're trying to do, you're trying to remove what we call the price effect.
right.
Okay, and let me give you a very basic. Let me try to explain that in a simple manner as possible. I'm just using a very simple explanation.
Yeah.
So let's assume in year one, you grow. Make it very simple. You grow 10 banana trees. Okay, so the country produces 10 banana trees, and we value these banana trees at $1. Okay, for that year.
Right.
So our GDP in that year would be $10, all right? Because we have produced 10 banana trees and we value that at $1. Now in year two, if we produce the same 10 trees in year two, but the price have now moved from $1 to $2, we would have gotten our GDP of now $20.
$20
okay?
Because 10 years.
Because 10 by 2.
By 2, yes.
Okay,
right.
so you would have 100% increase in what we call our nominal GDP.
Right, nominal.
But our real GDP would not have increased because we are producing the same 10 banana trees.
That's
so
correct.
Year one, 10 banana trees. Year two, 10 banana trees. We have zero growth. Okay, so when we're doing the GDP in year two, we would say, well, for that year, we've had zero growth, although our nominal GDP would be showing some increase. But in real terms, we have not shown any increase. Where we would show an increase is if in year one, we produce 10 banana trees, but in year 2, we produce 15 banana trees.
Please.
We have done 5 more than we did last year. That would have been a 50% increase. All right. So that's what brings me to the calculation for GDP from tourism. So it may be showing that in real terms, we are improving in tourism, because last year we may have gotten 1 million visitors into Dominica, but this year we got 1.2 million visitors. So it shows in the real physical stock of visitors have increased. My problem though is that although we are showing a real increase in our GDP in the tourism sector, the question is, what is the impact? In other words, if we get an additional 200,000 people, did these 200,000 people go out there and spend in the economy? Did these 200,000 people go out there and do something? And that's the reason why when you are doing the calculations, you have to be very careful that you put a higher value to persons who still were visitors, those who come and who stay in a hotel, stay in an Airbnb and so on, because that is a lot more substantive than the cruise ship visitors. So that has to be accounted for. So I think that it is very important to draw this out, because when the government boasts that, hey, our economy is growing, the IMF reports 4.5% growth. Well, look around. It is not broad-based. It is not even sustainable. All right. So what that means is, for example, when these projects, investment programs end, then that growth that's linked to that disappears, and then you were like, okay, so where are we going to get the other growth from? Because you have suppressed the other sectors of the economy that would give you growth. You've suppressed the manufacturing sector. You have suppressed the agriculture sector. You have suppressed the domestic construction sector. All of those areas that would otherwise give you something, they have been suppressed. So looking down the road, we are in for some more difficult times and some very hard times in Dominica, because this government has simply failed to really deliver and to really start the true engines of growth. And that's the reason why it's also in our 10 pillars, we're very careful to say that our focus is going to be as a pillar, agriculture, because we understand that when agriculture is taking place, when the farmers are getting this money, the farmers are going into the local shops. They will be in the local shop buying. They're the ones that are going to come down into town and buy the goods not only in the grocery shop, but in the supermarkets and in other merchandise. They're the ones that are going to do that. When we had the movement of persons out of the rural areas coming into town, you had a whole different economy in Dominica. Now that has largely stopped, because agriculture is such a small portion of that. 70% of our population living in the rural areas do not have those deep pockets. They do not have access to income. Then the whole economy is now revolving around a few investment projects and tourism. And that, to me, spells disaster. We have to change that metric. And if we don't, we'll continue to descend. Even when we appear to be growing, we're going to continue to descend into poverty, which is what's happening now in Dominica.
We all know they will run with this, because that aspect of the report, of course, would give them some sort of, relief, and they will feel that things are moving. Just as you explained, we understand the implications of that. But it's not that we are looking to criticize what the IMF has said, but now that we know that part, which is a positive and given, fair enough, what else concerns the IMF in this report?
Well, there are several things that they raise, and one of them is they raise the fact that the government has set itself what they call the fiscal rule. And what they've said is that they were going to keep the fiscal deficit, their spending in excess of their revenue. They're going to keep that at 2% of GDP. Because at a certain level, that's a limit that you set. You say you will not spend more than 2% of what you are bringing in terms of revenue, whether either from CBI or from taxes. That's a good thing, because what that does is that it allows you then to pay down your debt.
You can service your debt from that.
You can service your debt comfortably You paid down, and over time, you were able to see your way, so to speak. What has happened now? They have doubled it. Instead of 2%, they're now up to 4% of GDP. So they have completely ignored their own rule that they put. And one of the implications of that is that we're going to see escalating debt. Because if you're spending much more than you're bringing in, then what happens? You have to borrow. You must borrow the rest. All right. And that is where your debt levels continue to get out of control, because you are actually spending more than you're making, and your debt levels continue to go up. And that is a very, very, very big problem the government has. Now, I found it interesting that the government tells the IMF that the reason that they're spending so much has to do with the geothermal project. And I don't want to misquote them, so let me go back to it. It says that that's the current account, right? Okay, so it says that all right, I need to get that growth there very, very straight. Right. So wow, they're saying that the current account deficit, right, is expected to return to its norm by 2031. That's 5 years from now. All right. But under current policies, it continues to decline.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then they're right. There is a part that they're saying that the 2% primary surplus rule has gone out the window, and they are having difficulties. Okay. And the reason why they're having those problems. Now, the IMF goes on to say that the government is having some issues because they are having a limited efforts in reducing the reliance on CBI revenues. Okay. In fact, the IMF is recommending to the government that they limit discretionary import duty exemptions. That's a major, major problem. So where we are finding that the import duties that are so high in Dominica, however, the government of Dominica allows a number, millions and millions of dollars in duty-free concessions to its friends, the friends of the government. And that's why a number of persons support this government, even if the government is not doing right, because they can get duty-free, they can get the exemptions while the rest of the country pays for it.
But that's hitting the treasury. That's hitting the treasury.
Of course it is, because that is money that should have gone into the treasury that would help the government increase its tax revenues. But there's a huge hole, and the IMF is saying that they need to limit those exemptions. In addition to that, they need to introduce a solid waste fee and strengthen tax administration and compliance. Okay, so that's on the revenue side. You have to now go basically, and we've seen that already. So where in Dominica over the past couple of weeks, we have seen where the police are out in force, literally forcing persons to pay their license and their insurance and so on, and their fees to the government, which is a good thing. I have no problem with that. A person should not be driving around without license and insurance. But they have now done that because they're going after anywhere there's a potential for resources. They're now going after it because they need to get the revenue situation under control in view of the fact that the CBI continues to decline. Okay, they talk about the need to redesign the national employment program into a skills-based, time-bound training program, and then to recalibrate the housing program with clear eligibility criteria and cost recovery measures. You know, these are things
that we have been talking about, Doc.
We have been talking about. These are things that we have been saying that the government should engage in. that you cannot just be giving free housing, so-called free housing, where people don't even own it. It is best to give people a path to home ownership. Right? So if you pay the path for them, they're paying something back. It could be a small contribution, but they're paying something back over time. It becomes theirs. But you must have that, and that is something that is tried and tested. It was done by the Freedom Party. They did housing schemes. It was done by the Labour Party in the 1970s when the Bath Estate area, that was a housing scheme that was built by Patrick John. Then you have the housing scheme that was built by the Freedom Party, the Royal Bank housing scheme that was built there. Then you had the Workers' Party, the housing scheme in Kinfield. In all of these situations, persons are now owning, they now own their own homes, they now have possession because they paid something towards it. It was not free, and so the IMF is urging the government to be careful, because all of that is causing them to have overruns on their fiscal account, and that is not a good thing at all.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we mentioned the houses, because these are things that I wanted that to be clear, because it is not something that it was unheard of. I mean, these are the narratives that we have been, preaching all along. But interestingly, as you talk about the apartments, not only that you give people who are working and can afford to pay something for the apartment, but the government itself actually is now the person, the entity that has to sort of maintain the apartments, which means that, you have broken steps and so and so and so, where apartment is plumbing issues. The government has to do it. I don't know if under the contract that they have, when they give the house, that they have what the occupier or the occupant has to fulfill, but you cannot tell me as an occupant that do not own a house that have to do XYZ, because these are major problems in the houses, in the apartments. If you have electrical problems, sewage problems, water line problems, and so forth, and even the hot water system, I mean, you can expect me to go and repair that. Maybe a little toilet I can bring, and so, your tap go, you can buy that, and so. But that again, so not only that they are losing revenue from, because they're paying politics with that, the houses, but also when it comes for major repairs, the government itself has to meet the expenditure for these things. How do we go from here? Because it really doesn't make sense. So the IMF is on track, and we have always been saying, look, we are not opposed to people who really need housing or shelter to get. You do your assessment, there's a needs assessment, particularly elderly, particularly those who are unfortunate. And, you do your selection there based on the need, and let the necessary department of government do that thing. Should not have political interference there at all. And so the government really is in a real problem there, because you give the houses free, persons who can afford are not paying, yet when major problems occur, the government has to actually do the maintenance. Is that fair for a system that is struggling? No, I don't think so.
No, you're absolutely correct. It is not, and that is something so that I think the government would do well to look at. But then again, you have a government that is certainly not in a position to make any changes after 25 years. If you have not been able to make a change, I don't see you making it now. I think now is the time for the government to agree that they have done all that they could as far as promoting this country, and it's time to step aside and let more competent persons take over. As basic as that, as simple as that, because they will never get it. For years we have been saying that the CBI is not sustainable. For years we have been begging and pleading to this government, please focus on agriculture. Please focus for the NEP, provide people with skills that they can help build the economy, that they can help generate income, that they can help, provide, do more, so that they're not just taking out, they're not just taking away, but they're giving something back. For years we've been advising, we've been pleading, and it's falling on deaf ears. I think it's time for them to really step aside, because we do have a plan that will change this country. We do have a plan that will transform this economy. And that is what we're talking about: a plan for agriculture, a plan for essential oils, a plan for our water industries, and so on. These are some very robust plans that we have, and we continue to talk about as part of our 10 pillars to shared prosperity. But I I noticed as well that the IMF stressed the government spending on the transmission lines on geothermal. I was of the view all along that that was done through a loan that was given through NBD, but it seems that the government did some spending in that regard. But my bigger question, my big concern, so is now that we have reached a point where the geothermal energy part of it is now being fed back into our system, into the Dominic system. The question that everybody is waiting to see is whether or not we are going to get a reduction in electricity costs in Dominica. And the initial evidence we have is that it's probably not. We are probably not going to see any dip savings from that huge investment in geothermal, because it's simply not enough. So that Dominic still has to rely upon their turbines, still have to rely upon very expensive diesel coming to the country. And especially now, if that situation in the Gulf continues for much longer, we are going to have a very serious problem.
Yes, and let me just take some of the comments. We'll get back to that. Yes, Owen Prosper, yes, we heard you. You're just ending us up. Somebody else is saying, I just cannot understand. The bird on the flag became the government ever since you come around. I don't know, Doc, since you come around. Somebody saying duty-free concession is a scam. If you know somebody in customs, you can bypass the system. Wow, that's a lot of depression. Maybe not for them, but for the people. And somebody saying, but can you honestly base the agricultural GDP on supermarket sales and exports? Maybe that's a question for you, Doc.
Sorry, what's the question?
The question say, can you base the agricultural GDP on supermarket sales and exports?
No, absolutely not. Because I mean, in a lot of cases, even agricultural produce that has been sold in the supermarkets comes from overseas. We still import a substantial amount of agriculture produce out of Dominica. And that, to me, in a country that is so blessed with so many things, to be importing agriculture products just speaks to how neglected the agriculture sector is here in Dominica. That is something that we absolutely have to change. And in the same mode of question and answer, somebody's asking, do you have a plan for duty taxes on imports, especially, and we talked about it at our meeting in Campbell last week, where the government is charging you, even before you pay anything else, you have to pay $10,000 if you import a vehicle before the year 2015 or something else. $10,000 up front to the government. And then they have duties been charged on all of that. So they add all of those values. So they add these things, and then they charge you VAT and so on it. So at the end of the day, you'll find that you have a really huge bloated bill for the government. And that is not correct. In fact, in a number of countries now, Barbados is starting to do it. I saw a report where Anguilla started it, where they're now beginning to charge duties on the FOB value of the commodity. So if you're going to pay a VAT of 10%, that VAT should be 10% of what you pay for the item, whether you paid for the item in Dominica or you paid for the item in Japan or in the United States. And that to me makes sense, because what it will do is that it will keep the prices down. Because what they're doing now, the practice that they're doing now is to, if the good costs you $100 overseas, they slap on the freight, they slap on the insurance. When it gets there, you pay the import duty, the custom charges, the tailgate, all of that. By that time, you move from $100 probably to $300, and then they slap you the VAT of 15% on 300, as against the VAT of 15% on 100. So that is something that we'll absolutely look at as one of our 10 pillars, is a complete revamping of the tax system in Dominica. We believe that the tax burden is way too high on the Dominican public. We need to allow people to have more spending money in their hands, More money in their hands mean that they'll be able to spend more. That itself is a good indicator, good way of growing the economy. So these are some of the things that we are looking at to give people some relief from these very high taxes that are imposed upon them by this government. And
Yes.
we believe we'll succeed in doing that comfortably once we're able to grow the economy. And we do have a very good plan for growing the economy.
Yes, and that is a fact because I mean, we're already out of time, but we'll just spend a few minutes discussing this. We have been speaking about, transiting the NEP should have some level of transition by now because some of them have been in this thing for about 5 years now, and they're on the same salary, same skill, same job. There's no room for upward mobility, and we have always talked about transforming skills and make it a skill-based sort of venture so that people at least could augment their skill. Even some of them, if they are satisfied that they have learned sufficiently, they do not even have to be employed by the government. They could go on their own, and that is what it means when you furnish people with requisite skills to get out and to for themselves. But importantly, you made a point earlier with the geothermal, and let me just again review what in total, because the government is boasting about it's been commissioned now. Fair enough. We want results now. We want to see that the benefits of the geothermal is now immediately received by the consumers of electricity. We're talking about you have a 10 kilowatt 10 megawatt plant, right? And let us say megawatt, a 10 megawatt plant, geothermal. But yeah, our demand right now is between 22 and 24. 24 being the highest, 22 being the lowest. Why? Because remember, in the rainy season, you have more efficiency with the hydro as opposed to in the dry season, when you will have to rely less on hydro because the water level is lower. And so your turbines don't get that kind of force that it requires. So you have to depend mostly on diesel generated. But at the point, that's now 10 megawatt. So we use about 22. Now, I'm saying the government is to be boasting about exporting excess of geothermal. We are not at this point there yet. So let us say now we want the people to benefit. Are we now going to see a combination? Because right now we have a combination of diesel powered and hydro. Are we now going to see a combination of, and it may not be 10 megawatt, remember they run lines, you may have leakage elsewhere. So we can put it between 8.5, 9, thereabout. But let's say that is it. So, Doc, are we going to see a combination of the use of geothermal and hydro and diesel powered? And if that is the case, it would be a little bit above our demand. So, which means that something has to shut off, and the easier thing to shut off is diesel. And if we shut off the diesel, it means that on our fuel surcharge, we can get sort of a rebate technically, and we should be able to realize lower prices. Because remember, we said that, and it is aware that Dominica absorbs 97.7% of the fuel surcharge. The consumer comes up with 2.5. So we have to understand this, that it is no longer a talk shop now. You boast of geothermal. Now we have the amount that we have just above what we're consuming. We expect now that Dominicans should see now a reduction in their electricity bills. We cannot pussyfoot with that again. There should be no more excuse. We have did for 10 plus years for geothermal. We may not have all what we want. A 10 megawatt plant, we're using between 22 and 24 megawatts with respect to our low demand and high demand. Fair enough. We see now a room for benefits, and we don't want any more excuses from the government. We want to see very soon Dominicans starting to benefit now, Doc, because the talk is over now. The plant is there. We agree. We give it a thumbs up. Let us see now the benefits, because we have been calling for this benefit. And remember, we're on record calling for the benefits for Dominicans. Just like you were on the record calling for the NEP program to have been skill-based. Just you have been calling for the CBI to be less reliant on and focus our attention on the other growth sectors. The IMF come and say the same thing. Today we are putting it on record, Doc, that we want to see the consumers of electricity in Dominica see a reduction in their electricity bills. Your take on that, and we can just close.
But the big question is whether we are going to realize that, because the government did something very, very odd. They put in these hundreds of millions of dollars into exploration, and when it came time to build a plant, they turned it over to an Israeli company that then turned around and took money from the National Bank to set up the operation. The big question is, how much is this company going to be charging Domlec to provide? Because bear in mind, this is not Domlec's geothermal, it's not government's geothermal. It is now being owned by an Israeli company that has to make their return on the building of the plant and so on. So the question then becomes, in their calculations, how much are they going to be charging? And if you think of a common term, per kilowatt hour, how much are they going to be charging? We know, for example, how much is being charged based on the cost of fuel and the amount that's been used. You have a cost, you have a petrol cost per kilowatt hour. The question is, what is the geothermal cost per kilowatt hour, and whether it is substantially less than the petrol price. And that is something that we have to look at very, very closely. Because if we don't realize the savings there, if they're charging around the same thing, they might say, okay, well, you're charging, I'm just taking an example. You're charging $1.50 per kilowatt hour. Well, we'll charge you $1.50 per kilowatt hour as well. It will not be any difference. To realize any kind of savings that translates to a reduction in the price of Domlec's cost to the consumer. In other words, anything that translates to a reduction in the price of electricity in Dominica, we have to get great value from the geothermal. The fact that the geothermal is in the hands of a foreign company, the question then becomes whether or not they will be able to charge something that is reasonable, that will allow Dominic to pass on that benefit to the consumer. And that is where we have to wait and see. I'm going to save my judgment for the time being. They have already, I understand they're doing experimental inputs into the grid. I am closely scrutinizing my kilowatt hour per day to see if there's any change. So far, I'm not seeing any difference. It seems to be around the same thing. But it is still early days yet. We're going to be patient. We're going to wait. But I think in about a month's time, once that is fully integrated into the system, the Dominican public will be asking, as you said, for and saying, where is the decline? Where is the savings? Where is the benefit of geothermal for Dominica? And that is something that we have to look up for.
Very, very good point. And we're going to close it out, but very good point, because remember, it's not the first time that we have been promised. The government always justifying things, especially when they are project. When we had the Petro Caribbean and the storage tanks at Jimit, we were promised that we were going to get cheaper fuel. Now we have not realized that. So it's not the first time they have been talking like that. But somebody said,
you make an excellent point, Soso. I'd even forgotten that. You make an excellent point. They did promise us through Petro Caribbean that when they get cheaper diesel, that they would pass it on. But what happened? They end up selling the diesel the same price.
and the biggest buyer
and charging us.
Exactly. So good. We know that. Somebody said the technology getting advanced. I'm in New York and everybody house going solar right now. Well, let me just tell the person that some time ago, if you heard me, I gave up some sort of we were at the CSA center and I gave a presentation at that center. And before that, I was advocating that Roseau can become the what they call the solar capital of the Caribbean, because they have been talking about for many years, the government talking about rooftop gardens and so. And it's not every roof that is really designed for a rooftop garden, but also is every roof, whatever shape it is, I'm sure it can take a solar panel or solar panels. They can take solar panels. And so it is not just that we're looking at just thermal, diesel powered, hydro powered. Also, there's scope for solar energy. The sun is out every day, Doc. And that's an energy we never miss, And so we are advocating too that we can at least try to get off the grid and try to put in that form of energy into the society so that we can ease up the grid. But notwithstanding, I'm going to ask you to come to your closing remarks. But it is that our mobile banking, we always say that we desire your contribution, and we say, continue the support that you have been giving us. We have been actually advocating on your behalf, and it is. We need finance and we need funds to move our programs forward. You have called for us to be on the ground. We have been doing this, and it takes a lot for us. But we're just saying, another little reminder, That our mobile banking ID is 555-2242, and the account number of this is 1005636. You could also visit our online uwp-dominica.com, click on it and go on donation. And here it is that you can give a donation. So we are, appealing on the listening public that, give us the support that is required. I see somebody made a comment there. Yes, this is Dr. Thomson. Where you come from? You look like you come out. You can fix all country in the world. You don't say that. You don't say you can fix all country in the world. I mean, we have to respect your expertise. And for those who are critical of you, it's not something you like to talk about. But we have to respect, people in their field, and you have done great work over the world or around the world, and we want to commend you for the work that you have done. And I know that one day the opportunity will be given to you to show your talent and to transform this economy with your team. And we know it's not going to be an easy task, but the know-how is already set. And we know that we have the talent, we have the human capacity, we have the resource around you, and we have the resource in the team. Europe is a viable alternative. We are ready to go, and we're just asking Dominicans to trust in us. So at this point in time, we say this has been, real talk. I would just want your closing remarks as we depart from our program, because we are already over time.
Yes, so thank you very much for having me tonight. It was excellent, and as you talk about the work I've done, and last week we talked a little about that, and somebody was asking. I just remembered something I failed to mention was the fact that when I did this paper on currency crisis, the Chinese central bank asked my permission to actually translate that into Chinese. So I think it meant something to them. It meant something to them.
So
He's
Chinese.
So they have translated my work into Chinese and for use obviously for their thing. So I just want to urge the Dominican public to continue to support the United Workers' Party. When I say that we're on the ground on Wednesday and Thursday in Warner, I'm talking about the party. All right, so we're going there together. It does not mean that these are the only 2 days we're on the ground, because individual candidates are doing
we are as a team.
Right, but as a team, we are focusing on Warner for this week. But in the meantime, individuals are still doing their own work. Different people have different days that they interact with their constituencies. We're encouraging that. We are continuing to work very hard on having candidates that will be able to contest the next election. I know people have been asking about that. That is something that we continue to work very hard on, to ensure that we get candidates that are well respected and that the people of Dominica can likely look up to. So we are working on that diligently. We see that as important, but in the meantime, we're continuing to do what we have to do with a message of hope, with a message of inspiration, with the 10 pillars to shared prosperity, our plans to revamp agriculture, to rebuild our tourism sector, to have a water industry, to have a social program that benefits all of Dominica, to transform the NEP, to introduce a higher minimum wage, to have tax reform that lowers the cost of living for all of Dominicans. So we have a lot of good, solid plans that have been born out of years of experience and knowing what is required in an economy like ours. So we want to encourage Dominicans to give us the support and let us do, what we have to do to ensure that, we build this country. Dominica, I keep saying, our best days are ahead of us. And we're looking very much to that day which I suspect is not far from now, so when this new government of the Workers' Party will be in office and will be able to do what we have promised the people of Dominica, which is to bring growth and development to this country.
They will know who ready or not. Yeah, have a good night, everyone. Till next time, we say so long. Have a good night. And to those who participated, have a good night. Till next time, love you all.
Take care. Bye-bye.